Creepy True Stories Part 1. Lisa Lamb was visiting the California Cecil Hotel when she strangely disappeared. Surveillance shows her coming in and out of an elevator almost as if she's scared of somebody or possessed or something, seeing a ghost, but there's nobody there. Nobody could explain this strange behavior. One day, customers of the hotel started tasting something weird in the water. When they went to check the water tanks, they found Lisa's body in it. No drugs or alcohol was found in her autopsy. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to Lisa.
I can confirm that this is a true story. In 2004, a 16-year-old boy who was staying with a friend in their cabin up in New Hampshire was having a hard time falling asleep. Around 3 a.m., he was still awake, and he remembers thinking how eerily quiet and totally pitch black the house was. And that's when he heard it. The front door opens and someone comes inside and begins walking through the house down the hallway right outside of his door where it stops. The door opens and the boy is instantly petrified because in walks this tall, shadowy figure that marches to the center of the room and then bows onto the ground and disappears. The boy stays up all night, terrified that this thing's gonna re-emerge and just look at him. Finally, he hears his friend's mom making coffee in the kitchen, so he runs out to tell her what happened. The whole time he's explaining what happened, she's just looking at him with sympathy in her eyes. And finally she says, "My husband visited me last night too." Her husband was dead, and I was that 16-year-old boy.
Scary stalker stories. This one's gonna make you afraid to go to bed. A woman named Chelsea Clark was watching movies with her boyfriend when the next day she woke up and received this message. It said, "Really cute couple." His profile picture was a picture of the Joker. She hurried up and screenshot it, but then literally later that day the account was deleted. Police soon investigated but found no leads and could not trace him. What would you do in this situation? Somebody taking a picture of you and your boyfriend in bed, but turns out there's an update to the story. Turns out it was a hacker from Egypt in a group called Spammers and Hackers who hacked into her boyfriend's webcam while they were watching Netflix. I would start covering my cameras on my laptops, ladies. Like this video if you want more scary true stories.
Hey, what's up you guys? So today we are going to be talking about why 3 a.m. is the scariest time of the day. Some say that the veil between our world and the spirit world is thinnest at 3 a.m. Others say that demons and ghosts and spirits are strongest at 3 a.m. Some also say that the number 3 is like a mockery to the Holy Trinity, so that's why it's a bad time of day as well. And then I decided to look into it to find out where that whole stigma around 3 a.m. actually began. Around 1535, the Catholic Church forbid people from doing any activities from the time of 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Around that time, there were a ton of witch hunts going on, so the Catholic Church believed that witches were out doing spells and that magic was the most powerful around that time. I have had a ton of crazy experiences around this time. If you guys want to hear any of my personal scary stories, let me know. And if you have any stories you want me to hear or talk about, DM me on Instagram, the link is in my bio. And I'll see you guys next time.
Real scary food stories. Before our story starts, Joseph had already taken out 10 people. And they were usually people that were homeless. Or people who did drugs. He would usually take out these people under a bridge with an axe. One time he even taken out a lonely fisherman who was under the bridge and caught him murdering. His full name was Joseph Metheny, and even after killing all those people, he opened up a burger stand. Now that he opened a burger stand, he would put his victims in a meat grinder and use their meat as burgers. Eventually, Joseph got caught and told the police that he would sell pork rolls and human meat mixed together, and nobody could tell the difference. He said, if you season them right, they both taste the same. Kinda makes you wonder what's in the sandwiches you're eating nowadays. Like this video if I should do another part of Scary Story.
This story has the best ending ever. In 2003, a 9-year-old was home alone playing video games when he thinks he hears his cat meowing on the back patio, so he goes downstairs to let him in. He sees a deranged-looking man standing on his back patio howling at the sky, who then quickly looks at the boy. He grabs a fistful of cigarette butts from the ashtray, stuffs them in his mouth before he starts howling at the sky some more. After the police take the man away, they come back to talk to the boy and his family. Turns out the man had severe autism and lived in that boy's house up until his mother passed away, at which time he was transitioned to a mental institution. He broke out of that mental institution to go looking for his mom, which is how he came back to the boy's house. 15 years later, that same boy is sitting on his same back patio when he starts to hear that same meowing sound, and he looks up and it's the same autistic man walking towards his house. Knowing the man's story, he invites him into his house. The man's face lights up, he runs inside and starts crying. He was finally home. The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit.
So you think the boogeyman isn't real? Tell that to little William. On February 11th, 1927, a 4-year-old boy named William was playing with 2 other boys ages 3 and 12 in front of their apartment. The 12-year-old ran up to his apartment, and when he came back, the two youngest boys were missing. The police were called, and a few hours later, they found the 3-year-old on the roof of his apartment complex. When questioned where William was, all he would say is, "The boogeyman took him." Later that day, a man named Joseph came forward and said that he had noticed a tall, slender figure in an alleyway trying to calm a little boy. He recalls the little boy saying, "I just want to go home." Joseph later identified that little boy as William, and that was the last time anybody would ever see him alive. But there is a lot more to this story. Follow and like for part 2.
Urban legends to haunt you. Carmen Winstead. Carmen supposedly died after a gang of bullies pushed her down a sewer drain, causing her to break her neck. According to an online chain letter that began circulating in 2006, Carmen returned from the dead to take revenge on her tormentors, killing them one by one, before turning her murderous attention to those who didn't share her story.
This story will ruin your trust in people. The Real Haunted Hotel. In 1896, H.H. Holmes bought a whole lot of property on one block and fused them all together to become one hotel. He hired different workers to work on different parts of the hotel, so none of them knew the full layout of the whole hotel. The hotel opened just in time for the Chicago World Fair in 1993, where people all over the world came over to visit. But this wasn't no normal hotel. It was a torture chamber in every room. For most of that year, he trapped people. He had gas chambers, starvation rooms, and torture rooms. He designed the whole house to be one big maze so they couldn't escape. He would like to play with people and give them a false sense of hope, so he would make stairs that led to nowhere. When they thought they were escaping, they would go down the stairs and literally hit a blank wall. Once the victims passed away, he would hide them by dumping them into a furnace chamber. He's now known as one of America's first serial killers. Give this video a like if you want more scary stories.
This is why you should always lock your crawl space. In 2019, a young woman had just moved into the second floor of an apartment building. She noticed a tiny crawl space that connected all the apartments on the floor, but she wrote it off, citing, "Who'd be small enough to crawl through that?" One night, she walks into her living room, and out on the fire escape is a tiny woman desperately trying to yank open her locked windows. Terrified, she hides behind some furniture until the woman eventually leaves, at which point she runs into a room, grabs her phone, and calls the police. While waiting for the cops to arrive, she hears something above her and she looks up. One of the ceiling tiles had popped up, and the woman from the fire escape is staring down at her. She'd used the crawl space to get up there. The girl screams and the woman scurries away. It took 3 days for the police to finally get the woman out of the crawl space and bring her into custody. Turns out she was on some unknown, extremely hard drug and had totally lost her mind.
This one might make you afraid to have a girlfriend. Haunted relationships. In 2012, a boy Nathan said his girlfriend died in a horrible car crash. They were dating for 5 years. He was struggling trying to get over it and was grieving for about 13 months when he got a Facebook message. It was from his dead girlfriend Emily. He thought it was her mom on her Facebook page, but it wasn't. A few more months, the conversations continued, and she kept making references to the past relationship that they had that only they knew about. He started getting notifications of her on Facebook of her tagged in spaces that she should have been. He knew her Facebook passwords and changed them. And the messages and tags still kept coming. She would write weird messages like she's cold, she's freezing, and that she didn't know what was going on. To this day, he doesn't know if it was some type of sick joke or really a message from the dead. Give this video a thumbs up if you want more true scary stories.
Believe it or not, this is a well-documented true story. In 1947, an American ship picked up a horrifying distress signal coming from an unidentified vessel. The first transmission was all officers, including the captain, are dead. The next transmission was the whole crew is dead. The last transmission was I die, and then silence. The Americans trace the signal back to a ship that's drifting off in the middle of the Indian Ocean. They quickly assemble a rescue team who boards the ship. They find the entire crew has perished in the exact same position. They are on their backs with their hands up as if fighting with some unseen force, and they look like this. There was no physical damage to the bodies or to the ship itself. However, even though it was 100 degrees outside, it was 40 degrees on the ship, and the bodies were rapidly decomposing. As soon as they tie up the ship to tow it in, it explodes, and then it sinks. To this day, no one knows what happened inside of that ship. Some say it was a chemical leak, others aren't so sure. If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. In 2006, a group of cave divers decided they wanted to film a documentary in one of the most dangerous caves in the world. But only a few hours into their descent, and a freak storm erupts on land, collapsing the entrance to the cave. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks that were coming off the ceiling, they were forced to swim through one of the uncharted sections of the cave. After they've been diving for over an hour, they luckily come across this island in the middle of a tunnel, where they set up camp and wait to be rescued. After 48 hours and no sign of a rescue, the cameraman actually starts filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.